Susan Miller stood at the window of her small apartment on Earth. She watched the stars shine in the night sky, the same stars that hid the world of her alien love she had left 5 years ago. Her heart ached with the memory of Princess Lyria of the Zephyrian Empire, a being with beautiful scales that changed color with her emotions and eyes that contained all the beauty of space. Susan was a scientist who studied alien life forms. She had been young and eager when she first traveled to Zephyr Prime as part of a secret research mission her superiors did not approve. She had gone anyway, driven by her need to learn and discover. But what she found there changed her forever. The Zephyrians were an advanced race, their bodies covered in scales that shifted colors according to their feelings. They lived in harmony with their environment. Their cities made of crystal and living plants growing together in perfect balance. Princess Lyria had found Susan exploring the royal gardens. She should have called the guards instead. She invited the human to share her knowledge. Weeks passed as Susan and Lyria spent time together, learning about each other, their different worlds and cultures. Then love grew between them, a forbidden love, between a human scientist and an alien princess, but their happiness did not last. Lyria revealed she suffered from a rare genetic disease that would slowly take away her ability to move. Susan promised to stay, promised to help find a cure, but fear gripped her heart, fear of watching Lyria suffer. Fear of failure. One night while Lyria slept, Susan fled, returning to Earth, telling no one about what she had found on Zephyr Prime. She told herself she would find a cure using Earth science, but years passed and she made no progress. Susan worked at Earth Station Alpha, the greatest research facility humans had built in space. She spent her days studying alien biology, hoping to find something that might help Lyria, but the guilt of her broken promise never left her. She had not contacted Lyria since her escape, too ashamed of her own weakness. Mary Johnson, director of the station, called Susan to her office when she arrived. Mary looked serious. "Susan, we have received a message from the Zephyrian Empire. They are requesting our help with a medical crisis that is affecting their people, including their royal family." Susan felt her heart stop, the words echoing in her mind. "The royal family, Lyria?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "What kind of medical crisis?" Mary shook her head. "We do not know the details yet, but they believe human medicine might help them solve it. They have requested a team of our best scientists and medical experts to travel to their world. You are our leading expert on alien biology. I want you to lead this mission." Susan could not breathe, could not think properly after all this time. She would return to Zephyr Prime. She would see Lyria again. What would she say? What would Lyria say? The princess she had abandoned in her time of need. Mary was still talking about the mission details, but Susan could barely hear her over the pounding of her heart. The team was assembled quickly. 5 scientists, including Susan, and 3 medical doctors. They boarded the starship Aurora for the journey to Zephyr Prime. Susan told no one about her past connection to the planet or its princess. She feared the questions that would follow, the judgment in their eyes for what she had done. Linda Wright, the head doctor, approached Susan on the 3rd day of their journey. "You seem troubled," she said. "Is everything all right?" Susan forced a smile, just concerned about the mission. She lied. Linda nodded. "Understandable. We know so little about what awaits us. There, if only she knew," Susan thought. As Linda walked away, Susan knew exactly what awaited them. A world of crystal cities and color-changing beings ruled by a royal family with a princess who once loved a human scientist, who ran away when things became difficult. The weight of her shame pressed down on Susan, making it hard to breathe. At night, alone in her cabin, Susan looked at the small crystal flower she had kept all these years, a gift from Lyria. It changed color based on the emotions of the person holding it. Once it had glowed bright pink when she and Lyria shared their first kiss. Now it remained a dull blue, reflecting the sadness in Susan's heart. 14 days passed before the Aurora entered Zephyrian space. Susan stood on the observation deck, watching as the planet came into view, the swirling blues and purples of its atmosphere. The glittering cities visible even from orbit. Her memories flooded back the happiness she had found there and the pain she had caused. When she left, Captain Laura Evans made an announcement as they prepared to land. "We have received landing coordinates from the Royal Palace. The Queen herself will greet us. We are to follow all Zephyrian customs and protocols. The fate of this diplomatic mission rests on making a good impression. The ship descended through the atmosphere. Susan felt as if she were falling. Not just through space, but through time. Back to the moment when she made her choice to leave as the crystal spires of the royal palace came into view. She wondered if Lyria would recognize her, if the princess would hate her for breaking her promise. When the ship landed in the royal courtyard, Susan took a deep breath, straightened her uniform, and prepared to face her past. Her team gathered at the exit door, none of them knowing the truth that one of them had been here before, had loved here, had run away from here. The door opened, and bright light flooded in. Susan stepped onto Zephyrian soil once more. The royal guard stood in formation, their scales gleaming in the light of the twin suns. Susan recognized their ceremonial armor, the same design from 5 years ago. The guards led the Earth team through the crystal corridors of the palace. Susan walked with her head down, afraid that someone might recognize her. The throne room doors opened silently, revealing the grand chamber. Susan remembered so well the walls made of living crystal that hummed with energy, the ceiling open to the sky above, where flying creatures soared on gentle air currents. She dared not look up yet, keeping her eyes fixed on the shimmering floor. Queen Selene spoke, her voice musical and echoing through the chamber. "Welcome, humans of Earth. We thank you for answering our call in this time of need. Our people suffer from a disease that our medicine cannot cure. We hope your different knowledge might see what we have missed." Only then did Susan raise her eyes. The queen sat on her crystal throne, as regal as Susan, remembered her scales shifting between deep purple and blue beside her. In a hovering chair sat Princess Lyria. Susan felt her heart stop at the sight. The princess looked changed. Her once vibrant scales had dulled her body. Thinner her eyes, though. Those eyes remained the same, filled with stars. Captain Evans stepped forward, thanking the Queen for the welcome, presenting the team's credentials. Susan stood frozen, unable to look away from Lyria, wondering if the princess had noticed her, yet dreading the moment of recognition. The Queen explained the situation. The genetic disease that had once affected only the royal family had spread among the population. Thousands now suffered. "We have prepared laboratories for your work," Queen Selene said, "and gathered our best scientists to assist you. We hope together we might find a solution." The Queen turned to her daughter. "Would you like to add anything?" "My child," Princess Lyria moved her hovering chair forward, her voice softer than Susan remembered, but still carrying that musical quality unique to Zephyrians. "I would like to work closely with your team," she said, her eyes scanning the humans until they reached Susan, where they stopped. Susan felt the moment like electricity running through her body. Their eyes met across the throne room, and she saw the flash of recognition in Lyria's gaze. Saw the princess scales flicker rapidly through colors of shock, surprise, anger, and something else. Something Susan could not name. Lyria recovered quickly, her royal training taking over. In fact, she continued, "I would like to speak with Dr. Miller alone. Her expertise in xenobiology might be particularly valuable to our situation." Susan could not breathe, could not think. How did Lyria know her title? How did she know Susan was the team biologist? The Queen seemed surprised by her daughter's request, but nodded her approval. The rest of the Earth team looked at Susan with curiosity, none of them aware of the history between these two beings. As the others were led away to their quarters, Susan remained alone with Lyria and 2 royal guards. The princess dismissed the guards with a wave of her hand once the doors closed. Lyria moved her chair closer to Susan, her scales now pulsing with deep red, the color of anger. "You came back," the princess said, her voice low. "You left in the middle of the night without a word, and now you return as if nothing happened." Susan struggled to find words. "I did not know it would be you. I did not know this was why we were called here." Her voice trembled. "I never thought I would see you again." Lyria's scales flashed with color. "I searched for you," she said. "I sent messengers to Earth thinking you had been taken or hurt. It took me 2 cycles to accept the truth, that you had chosen to leave, that your promise meant nothing." Susan stepped closer. "I was scared," she admitted. "I was afraid of watching you suffer. Afraid I would not be able to help, afraid of losing you." I told myself I could find a cure by returning to Earth by studying in our laboratories, but the truth is I ran away because I was a coward. The princess was silent for a long moment, her scales slowly shifting to a more subdued blue. Do you remember your promise? Susan Miller, she finally asked. Do you remember what you said under the 3 moons of Zephyr Prime? The memory washed over Susan like a wave. They had stood in the royal gardens as Lyria revealed her condition. Susan had taken the princess's hands in hers and promised to stay to help find a cure to never leave her side. I remember, Susan whispered. I broke that promise. Lyria nodded, her chair moving in a slow circle around Susan, as if studying her from all angles. You humans are strange creatures, she said, so brave in some ways, so cowardly in others. I never understood why you left. I thought perhaps our differences were too great, that you had decided a human and a Zephyrian could not truly love each other. No, Susan said quickly, that was never it. I loved you. She stopped herself, unsure if she should speak those words after all this time. Lyria activated a holographic display showing medical data in the swirling script of the Zephyrian language. The disease has spread. She explained it began in the royal family, but now thousands suffer. The progression is slow but inevitable. My symptoms have advanced. As you can see, I can no longer walk without assistance. Susan studied the data, her scientific mind already seeing patterns the Zephyrians might have missed. This looks like a prion disease, she said. Similar to conditions we have on Earth, there might be treatment options. Lyria watched her with those star-filled eyes. You always did. That she remarked, your mind working faster than you could explain always. Seeing patterns others missed, it was one of the reasons I fell in love with you. The words hung in the air between them. Susan looked up from the data meeting. Lyria's gaze. Did you ever hate me? She asked for leaving. The princess considered the question, her scales shifting through colors. I tried, she admitted. But hatred requires energy. I needed for survival, and perhaps some small part of me hoped you would return with a solution. Over the next days, Susan worked with the Zephyrian scientists, examining blood samples, tissue cultures, genetic material. She found herself falling into easy cooperation with the alien scientists who respected her knowledge. She visited Lyria each evening, sharing her progress, learning about the 5 years she had missed. The princess told Susan about her work as an advocate for disabled Zephyrians, how her condition had opened her eyes to the struggles of her people, who could not meet the physical ideals of their society. Lyria had changed laws, created new opportunities. Susan listened with growing admiration for the woman Lyria had become. In her quarters each night, Susan reviewed her findings. She was getting closer to understanding the disease, the way it twisted Zephyrian proteins into harmful shapes. There were similar conditions on Earth, treatments that might be adapted to Zephyrian biology. Hope grew in her heart, hope that she might yet keep her broken promise. Susan did not notice that the small crystal flower she had brought from Earth, once dull blue, now glowed with hints of pink. 2 weeks into their mission, Susan made a breakthrough while studying how the disease affected Zephyrian cells. The answer came from an unlikely source: Earth's own history of treating similar conditions. She rushed to Lyria's private chambers without waiting for the formal invitation. The guards recognized her now and let her pass. Lyria was at her window looking out at the crystal gardens. When Susan entered, the princess turned her hover chair, her scales showing curious yellow at Susan's excited expression. You have found something, she said. It was not a question. Susan nodded, displaying her data on the room's holographic projector. I believe I have, she said breathlessly. I found similarities between your condition and prion diseases that affected humans. Centuries ago, our ancestors developed treatments that reshaped the harmful proteins before they could spread. We might adapt these treatments to Zephyrian biology. Lyria's scales brightened with hope, a sight that made Susan's heart leap. You truly think this might work? The princess asked, her voice careful, as if afraid to believe. We need to run tests, create Zephyrian-specific versions of the medications, Susan explained. But yes, I believe it could work. It won't reverse damage already done, but it could stop the progression, prevent others from developing symptoms, save your people from further suffering. Lyria moved closer, her hand reaching out to touch Susan's arm. her scales warm against human skin. "You came back and brought hope with you," she said softly. "Perhaps the stars knew what they were doing when they brought you to me again." Susan felt tears in her eyes. "I should never have left," she whispered. "I wasted 5 years. We could have been working on this together all this time." The princess shook her head. "The past cannot be changed, only accepted," she said now. "Tell me what we must do next." They worked together day and night. Susan with her Earth knowledge, Lyria with her understanding of her own people's biology, the other Earth scientists contributed their expertise. The Zephyrian royal scientists added their generations of knowledge together. They created a treatment protocol that might save thousands. Queen Selene called them to the throne room when they were ready to present their findings. The full court was assembled, the most powerful Zephyrians gathered to hear their solution. Susan stood beside Lyria, feeling strangely at home among these alien beings. The queen listened carefully as they explained the treatment, how it would work, what they could expect. "This is remarkable," Queen Selene said when they finished. "If it works as you predict, you will have saved many of my people, including my daughter." She turned to Susan. "Dr. Miller, your leadership in this effort will not be forgotten. The Zephyrian Empire will be forever grateful." Susan bowed her head. "As protocol required, Your Majesty. The honor has been mine to help," she said, aware of Lyria's eyes upon her. That night a celebration was held in the great hall of the palace. The first treatments would begin the next day. Hope filled the air. Zephyrians with their color changing scales showed bright yellows and golds, the colors of joy and optimism. Susan found herself surrounded by grateful aliens, many who suffered from the disease themselves, thanking her for her work. Linda approached Susan during the celebration, her face curious. "You seem very comfortable here," she remarked, "almost as if you have been among the Zephyrians before." Susan felt her heart race, but before she could form a lie, Lyria appeared beside her hover chair decorated with royal symbols for the celebration. "Forgive my interruption," the princess said, "but I must borrow Dr. Miller for a moment." Lyria led Susan away to a quiet balcony overlooking the Crystal Gardens, the place where they had first met 5 years ago. The 3 moons of Zephyr Prime hung in the sky, casting multicolored light across the landscape. "Your colleague suspects something," Lyria observed. Susan nodded, looking out at the gardens. "I think so," she admitted. "I have been too comfortable here, too familiar with your customs." She hesitated, then added, "Would it be so terrible if the truth were known?" The princess considered this, her scales shifting. Thoughtfully, "Perhaps not," she acknowledged, "but it might complicate things for you with your people. Humans can be judgmental about relationships with beings they consider different." Susan turned to face Lyria. "Those complications seem small compared to what I gave up when I left," she said, looking into the princess' starry eyes. "I was a fool." Lyria moved her chair closer. "The garden below us is where we first met," she said, "where you hid behind the singing flowers studying their biology until I found you. I should have called the guards, but you didn't." Susan smiled at the memory. "You asked me questions about Earth, about human biology. You were so curious." The princess' scales flickered with amusement. "I had never met a being without scales," she said. "I wondered how you regulated your body temperature, how you expressed emotions without color. Changes you were fascinating to me." They fell silent for a moment, remembering the beginning of their story. Susan gathered her courage. "I need to ask you something," she said, her voice serious. "Do you think you could ever forgive me for leaving?" Lyria's scales rippled with complex emotions. "I have had 5 cycles to think about that question," she said. "At first I was angry, then hurt, then simply sad." She paused, looking up at the moons. "I think perhaps I forgave you long ago, but could not admit it even to myself." Susan felt tears on her cheeks. "I do not deserve your forgiveness," she whispered. The princess reached out, taking Susan's hand. "Forgiveness is not about deserving," she said. "It is about healing, moving forward, choosing to release the pain of the past." Her scales showed gentle blues and purples. "We Zephyrians believe that some souls are connected across the stars, perhaps yours and mine. We're always meant to find each other, meant to part and find each other again." The first treatments began the next morning. Susan watched as Lyria received the initial dose. The princess insisted on being first, wanting to show her people there was nothing to fear. Susan monitored the results closely, watching for any negative reactions, but the treatment seemed to work, just as they had hoped. Lyria's body accepted the medication, her damaged cells beginning to stabilize over the next days. More Zephyrians received treatment. The results were promising, though Susan cautioned it would take time to see the full effects. No immediate cure, but hope for stopping the diseases. Progression. Queen Selene summoned Susan to a private audience, expressing her personal gratitude, the formal language of royal protocol dropping away as she spoke as a mother, thankful for her daughter's chance at a better life. As the success of the treatment became clear, Susan knew her mission was coming to an end soon. The Earth team would return home, their diplomatic task completed. She found Lyria in the Crystal Gardens. The princess often went there to think. Susan sat on a bench beside Lyria's hover chair. "I will be leaving soon." She said the words painful in her throat. "Our mission is almost complete." Lyria turned to her scales, showing deep blue sadness. "I know," she said softly. "Will you disappear again?" Susan Miller, "Once your duty is done." The question struck Susan like a physical blow she had been avoiding. Thinking about the future, Earth Station Alpha would recall their team once the medical crisis was addressed. She would be expected to return to her laboratory, her research, her solitary apartment, where she watched the stars and dreamed of Lyria. "Don't want to leave," Susan admitted. Lyria's scales flickered with surprise, then cautious hope, then doubt. "What would you do? Stay here on Zephyr Prime?" she asked. "What about your work? Your life on Earth?" Susan looked out at the Crystal Gardens, where exotic plants grew in patterns that seemed both wild and carefully designed, just like her feelings for Lyria. "My work, my most important work, is here," she said. "Helping your people adapt this treatment, monitoring the results, refining the protocol." She hesitated, then added, "and being with you if you still want me." The princess was silent, her scales shifting through colors too complex for Susan to read completely. After a long moment, Lyria spoke. "I have a request," she said, her voice formal, almost royal in tone when her scales glowed. "With nervous energy, my people need an Earth liaison, someone who understands both our biology and our culture. I have suggested to my mother that we create such a position." Susan felt hope bloom in her chest. "Are you asking me to stay officially?" Lyria reached out, taking Susan's hand. 5 years ago, you promised to stay and then you left." She said, "I have learned not to trust promises, but I am asking if you would consider a new beginning, not based on promises but on choice." Susan looked at their joined hands, human fingers intertwined with scaled alien ones. "I choose to stay," she said this time, "not out of obligation or promise, but because I want to, because I never stopped loving you." Lyria's scales bloomed with brilliant colors, illuminating the garden around them. "We will need to speak with your Earth authorities," she said. "Arrange diplomatic permissions. I cannot simply keep their best xenobiologist." Susan laughed for the first time in what felt like years, the sound echoing among the crystal formations. "I think Director Johnson might have something to say about that." She agreed, "but she owes me years of vacation time." They spent the evening planning how to approach both governments. Susan would need to request a permanent diplomatic posting to Zephyr Prime as Earth's medical liaison. Lyria would speak with her mother about creating an official position with the royal court. They talked late into the night, their excitement growing with each solution they found to potential problems. The next morning, Susan approached Captain Evans, requesting a private meeting to discuss her future assignment. The captain listened with surprise as Susan explained her desire to remain on Zephyr Prime. "You want to stay here permanently?" Evans asked, her eyebrows raised among the aliens. "They need ongoing medical support." Susan explained the treatment protocol will require adjustments. Monitoring the disease could mutate. "We need someone familiar with both human medicine and Zephyrian biology." She kept her voice professional, not revealing the personal reasons behind her request. Evans studied her carefully. "You seem very invested in this mission," she observed. "More than professional interest would explain." Susan met her gaze steadily. "These People are suffering, Captain. I can help them. It is as simple as that. She said, not entirely a lie, but not the whole truth either. I will forward your request to Director Johnson, Evans said finally. Though I make no promises about the response, Earth Alliance does not typically allow lone operatives to remain on alien worlds. Susan thanked her, knowing the battle was just beginning. She would need to convince not just Evans, but Director Johnson, and perhaps even the Earth Alliance Council her. Dedication to her work might help her case, but would it be enough? She found Lyria in the medical center overseeing the treatments of children affected by the disease, the sight of the princess working alongside the medical staff, her hover chair, moving between beds as she offered comfort and encouragement, made Susan's heart swell with pride and love. When Lyria noticed Susan watching, she came over her scales, showing curious yellow. What news? She asked. Susan explained her conversation with Captain Evans. The princess listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. That is only the first step, she said. There will be resistance. Your people are protective of their knowledge. As if summoned by their discussion, a message arrived from Earth. Station Alpha Director Johnson wanted to speak with Susan immediately. A communication link was established in the Palace Communications Center. Susan stood before the screen, trying to appear calm and professional. As her director's face appeared, Dr. Miller Johnson began without greeting. I have received an unusual request from Captain Evans. She says you wish to remain on Zephyr Prime indefinitely. Yes, Director, Susan confirmed. As Earth medical liaison to the Zephyrian people, the treatment protocol we developed will require ongoing supervision and adjustment. Johnson frowned, her eyes sharp. You have never shown interest in diplomatic postings before, Miller, she said. This seems a sudden change in career direction. Susan had prepared for this question. The Zephyrians are responding well to our treatment, she explained. I believe I can do more good here than returning to theoretical research on the station. This is applied science making a real difference, and it has nothing to do with your prior, unauthorized visit to Zephyr Prime 5 years ago. Johnson asked, her voice cold. Susan felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath her. How did you? She whispered, unable to complete the question. Johnson's expression hardened. Did you truly believe? Your unsanctioned use of Earth resources went unnoticed. We tracked the small research vessel you borrowed. We knew where you went. What we never understood was why you returned so suddenly, or why you buried yourself in research afterward, refusing all field assignments. Susan struggled to find words as she began, then stopped, realizing there was only one path forward. The truth: I met Princess Lyria during that visit. She admitted. We became close. Then I learned of her genetic condition. I promised to help, but became afraid and ran away. The disease has now spread throughout their population. The princess herself cannot walk without assistance. I came back by chance. But now I have a chance to make things right. Johnson listened, her expression unreadable. By the end of Susan's explanation, you're telling me, she said slowly, that you had a relationship with the alien princess. Yes, Susan confirmed, her heart pounding. I did. I do. The director was silent for a long moment, her eyes studying Susan. Through the screen, finally, she spoke. Your request is approved. Dr. Miller, Susan blinked, certain she had misheard. Excuse me. You will remain on Zephyr Prime as Earth's official medical liaison. Johnson said you will send weekly reports on the treatment, progress, and any other relevant medical or scientific discoveries. You will be our eyes and ears in the Zephyrian Empire. She paused, then added on a personal note, Miller, I hope you find what you are looking for there. The screen went dark, leaving Susan stunned by the unexpected approval. She left the communication center in a daze. Finding Lyria waiting outside, the princess scales showed anxious patterns of blue and yellow. What happened? She asked. Susan broke into a smile. It's approved, she said. I can stay. Lyria's scales exploded with color, bright, joyful patterns rippling across her body. Truly? She asked, as if afraid to believe. Susan nodded. My director gave permission. I am officially the Earth medical liaison to Zephyr Prime, she explained. They knew about my unauthorized visit 5 years ago. I had to tell the truth about us, about everything. The princess moved her hover chair closer, her hand finding Susan's, and we are still allowed to be together despite their knowledge. The Zephyrian, Royal court still needed to approve the arrangement. Queen Selene summoned them the next day. Susan stood before the alien queen, feeling the weight of two worlds resting on the outcome of this audience. The queen listened as Lyria explained their request for Susan to remain as Earth liaison to work with Zephyrian scientists and continue monitoring the treatment protocol. "And is this the only reason you wish Dr. Miller to remain?" Queen Selene asked, her scales showing she already knew the answer. Lyria straightened in her hover chair, her scales showing royal purple, the color of truth and dignity. "No, mother, it is not," she said. "I wish her to stay because I love her, as I have since she first came to our world 5 years ago." The queen turned, her starry eyes to Susan and you human. "Do you share these feelings?" Susan met the queen's gaze without flinching. "I do, your majesty. I love your daughter. I left once out of fear, but I will not make that mistake again." "Queen." Selene was silent, her scales shifting through thoughtful patterns. Finally she spoke. "Relationships between different species are not unknown in our history. Though rare, they present unique challenges." "I understand," Susan said. "We come from different worlds, different biologies, different cultures, but we have already overcome so much." She gestured to the medical data displayed nearby together. "We have found a treatment for a disease your best scientists could not solve. Imagine what else we might accomplish together." The queen's scales showed amusement. "You make a practical argument for an emotional matter," she observed. Lyria moved forward. "Mother Susan has been approved by her government as their official liaison," she said. "We need only your blessing for her to remain in the palace as both Earth representative and," she hesitated, "my chosen companion." Queen Selene rose from her throne, moving with the fluid grace of the Zephyrian people. Despite her age, her scales rippling with royal blues and purples, the disease had affected her too. Susan realized, though, the queen hid it well behind royal dignity. "I will approve this arrangement," the queen declared, "but with conditions. Susan Miller will serve as Earth liaison. She will continue her work with our scientists. She will report to both governments," but she paused, her eyes intense. "She will also undergo the bonding ceremony if she truly wishes to be your companion." Lyria Susan looked to Lyria in confusion. The princess scales showed surprise. "Bonding ceremony," she whispered. The queen's scales rippled with what Susan recognized as determination. "Our people do not give their hearts lightly," she said. "If this human truly wishes to stay with you, to be recognized as your chosen companion, she must participate." In the ancient traditions, Lyria turned to Susan. Her expression worried. "The bonding ceremony is sacred." She explained, "It creates a connection between two beings that cannot be broken. It would bind our life forces together." She hesitated. "Many believe it also connects souls across lifetimes." Susan understood the significance now. The queen was testing her commitment, ensuring she would not run away again as she had before. The gravity of the decision settled on her shoulders. This was no simple, diplomatic posting. No ordinary relationship. This was forever. "I would be honored to participate in the bonding ceremony," Susan said, her voice steady, her eyes on Lyria. The queen seemed satisfied, her scales settling into calm blues. "Very well," she said. "The ceremony will take place at the rise of the 3 moons. Preparations will begin immediately." She glided from the throne room, leaving Susan and Lyria alone. "Are you certain?" Lyria asked once her mother had gone. "The bonding is not undertaken lightly. Even among our own people for a human," she trailed off. Susan took the princess' hands in hers. "I have already lived 5 years without you," she said. "I do not wish to spend another day apart. Whatever this ceremony entails, whatever it means, I accept." It fully the next days passed in a blur of preparations. Susan was introduced to Zephyrian traditions, taught the ancient words she would need to speak, shown the ceremonial garments she would wear. The Earth team prepared to depart their mission. Complete, only Linda remained behind to witness the ceremony as Earth's official representative. The night before the bonding, Susan stood on the balcony of her palace chambers, looking out at the 3 moons beginning their ascent tomorrow. They would reach perfect alignment, the time when Zephyrians traditionally performed their most sacred rituals. Linda joined her there, curious about what lay ahead. "You realize this is unprecedented," she said. "No human has ever bonded with a Zephyrian before. You will be making history." Susan smiled. History was not on my mind when I fell in love with her. She admitted Linda studied her with scientific interest. "What does the bonding actually do, physiologically?" she asked. "From what I understand," Susan explained, "it involves an exchange of biological material, a small amount of blood being mixed. This creates a permanent biochemical connection, allows Zephyrians to sense each other's emotions, sometimes even across great distances." She shrugged. "Whether it will work the same way with human biology, I don't know, and you're willing to take that risk?" Linda pressed. Susan looked up at the alien moons for Lyria. "Yes," she said without hesitation. The ceremony took place in the Crystal Gardens where Susan and Lyria had first met 5 years before, where they had shared their first conversations, their first touch, their first kiss. The royal court gathered in ceremonial attire, their scales glowing with celebratory colors. Queen Selene presided, her royal robes flowing around her as she spoke the ancient words. Susan wore a garment created specially for her, a blend of earth and Zephyrian styles that accommodated her scaleless human form. Lyria had left her hover chair for the ceremony, supported by 2 attendants, her legs weak but her determination strong. Susan had never seen anything as beautiful as the princess in that moment, her scales shimmering with love and joy. They spoke the traditional words together, pledging themselves to each other. Across distance, across time, across the very stars themselves, when the 3 moons reached perfect alignment overhead, Queen Selene presented the ceremonial blade. Susan did not flinch as a small cut was made on her palm. Lyria receiving the same. Their hands were pressed together, blood mingling. Susan felt a strange warmth spreading from her hand up her arm throughout her body, a tingling sensation unlike anything she had experienced before. She gasped as colors flashed before her eyes. Colors she had never seen before, emotions not her own flowing through her mind. Happiness, wonder, love. She was feeling what Lyria felt, their biochemistry connecting in ways human science had never imagined possible. When the sensation settled, Susan looked into Lyria's eyes, seeing the stars there as always, but now feeling the connection between them like a physical thing, a bridge across the differences of their species. The queen pronounced the bonding complete. The gathered Zephyrians erupted in displays of celebratory colors, their scales flashing in patterns of joy and blessing. In the days that followed, Susan and Lyria established their new life together. The princess, continuing her advocacy work for disabled Zephyrians. Susan, overseeing the treatment program that was already showing promising results. Their evenings spent in the Crystal Gardens, or in their shared chambers, learning more about each other, planning their future together. Susan sent her weekly reports to Earth Station, Alpha, sharing medical discoveries, cultural insights, diplomatic developments. Director Johnson seemed pleased with the arrangement, occasionally sending personal messages of support, along with official communications. Earth and Zephyr Prime began discussions of wider cooperation, scientific exchanges, cultural missions, the bonding of a human scientist and a Zephyrian princess, opening doors previously closed. 6 months after the bonding ceremony, Lyria called Susan to the medical center. Excitement, evident in her rapidly changing scales. "Look," she said, pointing to the latest test results. "The treatment is working better than we hoped. My cells are beginning to regenerate. The damage is slowly reversing." Susan studied the data, her scientific mind, careful not to jump to conclusions, but the evidence was clear. The treatment wasn't just halting the disease's progression. It was allowing Zephyrian bodies to heal. "I never thought this would be possible," she admitted. Lyria took her hand. "I may walk again one day," she said, her scales glowing with hope, "because you came back to me." That night they stood together in the Crystal Gardens, watching the 3 moons rise. Susan could feel Lyria's emotions through their bond. Contentment, hope, love, the connection. Growing stronger each day, she wondered if one day they might be able to share thoughts as well as feelings. The possibilities of their unique bond still unfolding. "Do you ever regret it?" Lyria asked the bonding ceremony, choosing to stay. Susan shook her head. "Never." She said, "I regret only the years we lost because I was afraid." The princess scales glowed with gentle blue. Perhaps those years were necessary. She suggested perhaps you needed that time to grow strong enough for this path, perhaps. I needed that time to learn what truly matters. Her hand found Susan's, the bonding mark on their palms, matching scars that had sealed their connection. Perhaps Susan agreed, looking up at the stars, the same stars visible from Earth, though from a different angle. I believe some things are meant to be, that some souls find each other across any distance. Lyria smiled, her scales shifting to the deep pink of love. We have much work still to do, she said. Many of my people still suffer. The treatment helps, but there is more to discover, more to understand. Susan nodded, her scientific mind already considering new research directions, new possibilities. We will face it together, she promised. And this time, I will keep my promise. The crystal flowers around them bloomed in response to their emotions, glowing with shared light, as the 3 moons of Zephyr Prime watched over the human and the alien princess. Their different hands intertwined, their different hearts beating as one, united across the stars by a love that had transcended fear, distance, and time itself.